If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
It's a fine line, as you do. It's a fine line between, like, holding intelligent, whatever. I don't even know. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Hey, I was promised.
You were promised lively
Clever Teresa. Yeah.
Well, clever Teresa's here. She just needs to, like, get the blood flowing a little bit. My tendency when I'm seated at a desk is to be very, like, and now we are going to discuss, instead of, being a natural human being. No, I'm very excited. Thank you very much for moving our recording time to a morning time slot, because as you have known about me for most of our relationship, from about 3 in the afternoon till about 7, I'm just worthless.
Yeah,
it's just not a time where I'm just like, you're like, no, don't you have anything interesting or funny to say? So it's good to be here in the morning.
It's funny because 1 to 3 is, I think it's something about digestion. Like, I think 3 isn't it supposed to be the liver hour or something, I've heard. Through the homeopathic grapevine.
Yeah, the homeopathic grapevine is misunderstanding traditional Chinese medicine just a little bit, because it's not about the function of the organ. That's called the Harari clock. And it's the flow of qi through the channels that it represents. So it starts at 3 in the morning with the lung, and it's from 3 to 5 a.m. is the lung time. But that's the lung channel, not the lung organ. And even if it was the lung organ is slightly different in Chinese medicine than how it's framed in Western biomedicine.
I've been drinking red clover tea.
What's that supposed to do for you? Does it turn you into a horse?
Yes.
Are you going to get scared of bushes now?
Yes.
Cool.
Bushes and waving grass.
Yeah. And you'll be scared if you saw something there 20 years ago that scared you. You'll be like, I'm scared again, even though nothing's happening. Great. You're turning into the worst version of yourself. Yeah. Horses are pointless.
Yeah, they're crazy.
All prey animals, as a matter of fact. It's not that they're pointless. Horses are there's a lot of very good therapeutic uses for them. They're beautiful creatures. They're scared of you, even though they could kill you very easily. They have a sense of humor. I have proof of that from my own personal experience. So I don't mean to be super rude to them. So Ramsey was a friend of ours and a clown. Maybe she was a clown. Maybe she was a friend of ours because she was a clown. That's probably how we met her, or we went to school with her, But she had an Arabian horse, a mare called Breezy, who was the sweetest baby ever. And I was allowed to go and take care of her and hang out with her and be with her there at Frog Belly Farm. One day I was like, yeah, I think we're ready. Like, I'm going to saddle her and just going to do a little walking around the neighborhood. And I went to saddle her up, and she bloated, so that when I went to tighten her girth, it wasn't tight enough. And I went to get on her, and the saddle spun around like a cartoon. It, like, spun around her barrel. And I was on my back.
That's something they do intentionally?
Uh-huh.
Wow,
Yeah.
They can do that? They're like, you're an asshole, I'm going to bloat?
No, she's like, it's uncomfortable. Don't cinch this thing. I know what you're doing here, and when it's tight enough, it's uncomfortable. So I'm going to pretend like I'm bigger than I am. So that you don't do it too tight. Yeah, and so I was on my back coughing in the dust under her. And she just stood there, calm as you please, just... It's like, you bitch. And then I was like, you're kind of my best friend. I think you're amazing. That was a really cool move.
And, like, to me, that's always been why horsemanship is so badass.
Yeah.
Is because horses are fucking dicks. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like...
Yeah, I mean, well, I look at him and I'm like, wouldn't you be if you were used to, like, having 7 states to be in, and then you're like, this is your 10 square meter paddock. Good luck. Like, I understand why they're all insane. It makes sense to me. I say that as though I have any experience other than my tiny. I don't. Oh, as always, everybody, let's just send a reminder out. This is not an expert podcast. This is an amateur podcast. We're here to talk about things we love. That's it.
Good reminder. So I've been drinking red clover tea, which is a bitter. We're supposed to have bitter drinks at this time of year. Apparently, it helps you cleanse. Maybe you know why, but that is what I've been drinking.
Cool. So wait, it's red clover tea. So when I hear clover, I think sweet. Because I remember maybe some sort of... you know what's really funny is I was thinking about fucking Beatrix Potter and the bunnies.
I love Beatrix Potter.
But I almost said I was thinking about the bunnies in Harry Potter. Shoot. Which is not actually that funny. It's just hilarious that I made that error. Yeah, the bunnies in Beatrix Potter, I always imagine them like nibbling on clover. That's what they do. They hang out on the clover. So I always imagine it to be a very sweet and kind herb. Apparently it's bitter.
It's got a more bitter taste. Yeah.
That's
been good.
Bitters are supposed to be good for digestion.
Yep. You're supposed to lay off the sugar this time of year and go for the bitter stuff. But
so the fact that I sent Mike to the gas station last night to buy me a collection of sweet things is maybe out of character for the season. I'm hearing that I'm not in sync with the seasons.
Well, I haven't consumed like a ton of sugar either, but we've just discovered the most amazing chocolate, which is called Tony's Chocolonely.
Okay.
Its big, selling point is that it's slave-free fair trade chocolate.
Great.
Which is wonderful. But it is just so fucking good. And so every night it's like chocolate. And so I've been waking up with headaches because I get headaches from from sugar and from dehydration kind of combo. Anyway, not doing any better than you are with the chocolate and the sweets.
Yeah, it was a night last night. But most of it is like emotional. Like, I have feelings. I need sugar. It's terrible. I remember being off sugar. I've done most of a Whole30, as I believe I've revealed to you. Although I go back and listen to the podcast, and you're very good to like cut out a lot of personal things. And I'm like, I think part of this is like sharing my shame. So like, I guess it's fine that only you're hearing it, but you've heard it all before. So I'm like, I'm always disappointed to find that you have very kindly removed things that are indicators of my real character from the podcast. I'm like, oh, Claire's so nice to me. She cut that whole thing out. But yeah, I've been. I lost my train of thought. It'll come back in a second. But I didn't lose it because I'm tired is the difference. It feels different to me. I didn't lose my train of thought because I have no vitality and I'm ready to just enter the grave. As I am at 5 o'clock. This morning I lost my train of thought because there's so much going on. Maybe I just that's a symptom to losing your train of thought. I don't know. Well, what I was gonna say is, so you kindly cut out all of my like confessions that I've never finished a Whole30, which I feel is like super relevant to this podcast. Like, how are they gonna know how to value and situate what we love if they don't know who we are? Like, there has to be some kind of like basis for the recommendation. Like, maybe you should try running. This guy really likes it, our friend Jeffrey. But if they don't know that we're pieces of shit who never run, or like, if they don't understand where like the recognition or the design, where it's coming from, I feel like they're losing out, Claire. So it's important to me that they know that I've never finished a Whole30, even though I've technically, quote, done. I say I've done several, but I'm always like 3 days before the end, I'm like, fuck it, I'm having a candy bar. I can't do it. So.
Well, I would argue the opposite, that in knowing what they love, they do know us.
Mm.
And also the way we talk about what we love reveals a lot.
Oh, all right. Fine.
I feel like those cold opens are really revealing into your psyche.
They are, except that you didn't. I listened to the baseball episode. Oh, sorry, I bumped the mic. I listened to the baseball episode and I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely right, that Cheryl thing. But then you cut out the part where I said my mom did that. And so, like, they have the part where I'm like, were you worried I'd be looking at you constantly to be making sure you react the right way? But they don't know what the front of the thing means unless they know that my mom did. It's not okay. I want them to know. Make your choices. That's your job. You're in charge. You do whatever you got to do.
Thanks.
But just to let you know, I'm definitely interested in sharing my piece of shitness with as many people as are willing to hear me talk about it.
I will leave in the Whole30 thing.
Finally, leave in the confession that I've never finished. Because, I can't identify with people if they're just, like, happy all the time. I'm like, come on.
I don't feel convinced that you've spoken about the Whole30 before. But I could just be forgetting. Because We've talked about a lot of stuff.
We have talked about a lot of things, and it doesn't matter. It's not.
But see, now we have to go explain what a Whole30 is, because there's people who don't know.
Oh, really? A Whole30 is a very restrictive diet that you go on in order to feel better, because sugar makes you feel bad, which is a truth universally acknowledged. Sugar makes you feel bad, and young men of good fortune must be in want of a wife. Those are the two things we know in the world.
And it lasts 30 days, which is why it's called a Whole30.
That's right. And you eat whole foods, which is why it's called a Whole30. I mean, it's just that. No grains, no sugar, no dairy. What else? No grains, no sugar, no dairy. That's pretty much it. And then,
legumes?
like, vegetables. No legumes either. Yeah, no beans.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's restrictive for sure. But
I
then,
accidentally went on one for 4 months.
yeah. Which is, it's like that's a backdoor brag. Oh, yeah, I accidentally went on all the, I just didn't realize I'd continued it. Oh, do you have perfect pitch, too? Okay. Okay. No. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And then my emotional troubles say, but wouldn't it be better if you had honey in your coffee? And I'm usually like, yeah, it would. Okay. So, I haven't successfully purged sugar demons, and I'm certainly not doing it today. I'm going to see our friend later this afternoon to look at her yard. Her visiting professorship was canceled.
Oh, no.
Because of the world ending. And so she's like, well, I'm staying here, and this yard is terrible. I had to take the tree out last year, and now it's just whatever. And I was like, I have a certification in permaculture, right? Can I come over and look at your yard? She's like, oh, my God. So we're doing that later today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very excited.
That'll be fun.
It will be, and it'll give me a chance to get out of the house
Yeah.
and go do something that's not just getting out of the house. Like, no, I actually have to leave the house. I have to go do this thing today.
Well, there's a different level of social desperation, even for the introverts, I think.
Mm-hmm. For sure. There's something I was convinced this morning, just because I've been reading a particular collection of stuff, but I was like, I think it's my gut bacteria missing the gut bacteria in the other person. Like, I think it's my gut bacteria that are lonely for people. Because, they are very social creatures. Like, they work together to do everything. Oh my God, one of my instructors said that he found a piece of research that we used to think that our, the gut brain, the enteric nervous system, we used to think that our gut brain was actually working at the suggestions of our immune system, but now they're kind of like, oh no, actually it is the immune system. The rest of the system that protects us from exterior pathogens is actually engaged by those bacteria. Those bacteria are not in the service of some higher whatever. They actually are our immune system. I was like, that's amazing.
That's really cool.
It's so cool. And of course I don't have citations for that, so please go look it up. There are a lot of free research websites that are available. But fascinating. And so my my desires to be social are, as an introvert, surprising to me. I'm like, oh, I really miss those people and I want to see them, but I want to see them in real life. And I'm pretty sure now that my bacteria miss you.
My bacteria miss you too.
Thanks.
They're lonely.
They're lonely. They're like, we used to have that other one around.
Where's the other one? We should introduce ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Claire Patton.
And I am Teresa Sparks.
And this is...
Oh, It Chooses You. This is It Chooses You, a podcast where we discuss the things we love and what that says about us.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and our friend who I'm going to see later today reminded me that It Chooses You is actually the title of a book by Miranda July that I either knew and forgot or never knew, which is super cool. So we'll eventually...
That's awesome.
We'll fold that in eventually. We'll both go read that book because she's amazing.
That's cool.
If you don't know who Miranda July is, look her up. She's fabulous. Yeah.
That's awesome. Teresa.
Claire.
I've been thinking about the things I miss in the current social distancing era.
Yeah, other than my bacteria.
Yes. I should have segued that better. Speaking of things I miss live performance.
Okay. I don't share that. So, great.
Yes.
This is perfect. I'm like, thank God no one's making me go see a live performance. And you're like, I miss it so much.
Well, today I want to talk about a very specific type of live performance.
Okay.
which is what I'm calling disaster theater.
Okay. I'm definitely interested. I mean, I've definitely seen, like, without even knowing what you're going to talk about, really, I've definitely seen some things that I would like to put in that category. Like, I already have an idea of what that means.
Right.
So that's good job. You've
Thanks.
touched on something.
So when I was in 5th grade, I auditioned for my elementary school talent show with a friend. Basically, the gist of our piece was that we drew faces on pillowcases, then gave the pillowcases arms and mittens, which were all attached and stuffed. We put the pillowcases on and then danced around, not choreographed, improv danced to Yakety Yak.
Yeah. This was in a middle school or junior high auditorium.
Elementary school cafeteria.
School. Sorry, you probably just said that, and I.
So the idea was that you were people with really long torsos and heads, and then tiny legs.
Yes.
So it was a funny visual, and that was about it.
So it was one joke.
Right.
It was one joke. How long was this performance?
I want to say 3.5 minutes.
Yes!
Yakety Yak. And again, no choreography. We were just
I mean, why give them that? They don't deserve that.
No. So
they have to be there. That's a captive audience. Those are the parents
Yes.
of elementary school children. You don't got to choreograph shit. They're coming anyway.
That's right. So in true Claire style, we made the costumes the day before the audition.
Of course.
And didn't actually finish them. We didn't stuff the arms and put the mittens on. And the mittens weren't attached. They would just be slipped onto the stuffed arm of the pillow person.
Okay.
You could just, once the arm is stuffed, you can pull the mitten up.
Yeah.
And affix it.
I mean, grown-up Teresa has all kinds of notes she might give these children.
Right.
The costumer needs to come to the next meeting, you guys.
So I didn't quite finish the costume. I didn't stuff the arms. So I'm literally getting ready to leave for school. I did not pre-purchase any kind of stuffing.
I'm sorry, I'm just dying. I'm just dying. Imagining you like 3.5 minutes with one joke to start with this maybe additional costume piece that might be interesting in some way, and then it's the day of, and you're like, oh no, it's not done yet. No.
Right.
I mean, it's 8:30. I don't have assembly until 11:15, so I got plenty of time. It's fine. Oh, I'm dying. So good.
So morning of, I think it's a Monday morning. I am really literally walking out the door, and I've got to find stuffing because I didn't pre-purchase anything. I've got to find stuffing for these arms. So I just open my top drawer, and it's my sock drawer and underwear drawer, and I just shove whatever's in there in the arms. I just shove them in, shove it in, like wrench the mittens on and go. I'm out the door. I'm ready for my debut performance.
Oh my god.
So
I'm on tenterhooks.
Yeah. So
because it's so clearly a disaster. Yeah, I'm on tenterhooks.
Looking back,
what's going to happen?
It should have
Is something
seen
going to
it
catch on fire?
coming.
Okay.
So the entire school assembles. This is I don't actually think it was an audition. I think it was just the talent show. I'm not sure. And it's not after school, it's during school hours. So the whole school assembles in the cafeteria. First K through 5th grade, a lot of parents show up, that sort of thing. My friend and I get on stage, and Yakety Yak starts, and we start doing our dancing, which I think was just a lot of legs, probably like river dance. And about 30 seconds into the song, the audience just starts losing it. They are losing their minds laughing.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, oh my God, we're fucking killing it.
Yeah.
We are doing it.
Yeah. Oh, little Claire.
This is going so well.
Little Claire can't yet recognize the difference between laughing at and laughing with.
So we finish our number to great applause.
Yes, that's right.
Lots more laughter. They fucking love us.
Thank you we missed work for a good reason.
Yes.
That was worth it.
I stumble off stage because you can't see very well through a pillowcase. There must have been eye holes. I can't remember.
There weren't eye holes. No.
No.
No. In my
weren't.
story, there definitely weren't. Because your parents wouldn't allow you to destroy pillowcases. You're allowed to, like, use them for a thing, but you can't ruin them.
Okay, so there's no eye holes,
Yeah.
so I stumble off stage.
Yeah.
There's no wings or anything. It's just the stage in a cafeteria.
Sure.
So I immediately get off stage. I peel off my pillowcase, look back at the stage, and to my horror, the entire contents of my underwear drawer are just strewn all over the stage.
Yeah. Nothing more upsetting than a bunch of 4th grader panties on a stage. Like, that's pretty upsetting. It's pretty upsetting.
It's upsetting.
Yeah. Even in an elementary school where you might expect some of that. Yeah.
Needless to say,
I'm dying,
was
and
mortified.
it's been 25 years. Like, if I had been in that room, oh my God, I don't know what I would have done.
So, Teresa, this was my first encounter with disaster theater.
Oh my God. It wasn't an encounter. I love the way you phrase that, as though it happened outside of you. This was your the first time you produced disaster theater. Oh, I love it so much. Oh God. Okay. I didn't know. I think you mentioned this. I think you've mentioned it before, but you definitely did not mention the panties on the stage. Oh. Okay, I'll get it together.
What could be more mortifying to a 5th grade girl?
Oh no, I feel so badly
There's
for you.
nothing.
Oh God, no, because when I was in 5th grade, I was the kind of person who would, like, get a hall pass to go to the bathroom, and if one of my fellow 5th graders had to be in the bathroom in the middle of class dealing with feminine issues, I would immediately be like, oh my God, Becky got her period. I was a cunt in 5th grade. So, like, no, I'm totally aware. Like, your body is changing and you don't really know what's going on, and then suddenly your underwear are all over in front of everyone and their parents. It's so funny now, but I mean, it's really funny now. I might not be able to empathize because it's so funny.
Okay, good. This is good. Because this helps me define disaster theater.
Is it? It's disaster theater. Let's try and get to a quick definition.
Right.
I'm sorry. I know there's so many. The laughter in
It's
my
okay.
brain. Oh. Okay. So, quick definition of disaster theater is what? Do you have one?
I do. It's live performance that is so objectively bad that it transcends bad and becomes good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before I really get into it, I want to say... I want to say that obviously, from my initial story, the disaster theater can be a very mortifying experience for the person performing said disaster theater.
For the person who thought they were doing something else. They thought they were telling a different story than the story they actually told.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So although it can be mortifying, it is a type of theater that brings true surprise and delight to its audience.
Yeah.
So although that experience was mortifying for me, that audience, they probably still talk about it. I mean, wouldn't you? I'm still talking about it, and it was horrible.
Forever. I'm going to talk about it as though it happened to me, as though I was there and saw it firsthand. I now own that story, and I'm going to tell it like it's mine.
You can all tell it. Yeah, please do. The best part is, I'll probably cut this out, I actually got a feature in the Winnipeg paper by teasing this story to the reporter.
Oh, when you were touring a Fringe show many years later. Oh.
Yeah, at a festival. And
so you're exploiting your child self.
Oh, yeah.
To get some reviews on the Fringe circuit. Sure.
Yeah. So he does this feature on, it doesn't come out, and I bug him. I'm like, hey, when's the feature coming out? He's like, it's going to be tomorrow. So the feature comes out, and there it is. I'm like, this is amazing. And right below it is like the mediocre review of my show. Immediately below it. So I thought I was capitalizing on the mortification, but then it turned around and like fucked me again.
Yeah, you compounded the mortification.
So I'm like, I gave you that story.
Yeah.
That embarrassing story.
Yeah.
I gave you my vulnerability, and you turn around and stab me in the back by printing the. It might not have been him.
No, and I don't want to speak up in defense of reviewers. I mean, who the fuck do you think I am? But I also want to say, you told him that story hoping to get something out of it, and that's not why you tell a story like that. So I think the gods were like, Claire, come on. Okay,
that's just
sure,
a good story.
You got your feature, but your mediocre review is going right underneath it.
It was a lesson from the gods.
This is the best. Oh my God.
So I just want to say that I myself have been in disaster theater productions. Uh-huh. And I have been the generator of disaster theater. Mm-hmm. So I am nothing if not compassionate for people who... I don't want to sound like I'm just shitting on other people's work.
Oh, sure.
It is a theatrical experience that 100% transcends, as you said, the story taking place on stage and becomes another drama on top of that. So it's not exactly theater, it's just an experience. And it is one of the most delightful, beautiful experiences that you can give to your audience. So I just want to keep that tone of like, this is... I'm very sincere. I'm not making fun of anybody. It's an unfortunate situation that brings so much joy.
Yeah, but it's really interesting if we think about it, like what we're in telling stories for. Like, what are you in it for? Like, if I were to answer for everyone, I would say I'm in it so that I can create a reaction in someone, right? And I have an idea of what reaction I want to create and why, and I'm employing all of my education and experience and talent, if I'm lucky enough to have any, and hard work, and I'm trying to do a certain thing, and then having done all those things, to see the... Oh, God, it makes me so happy, because it's such... I'm not unfamiliar with the experience of doing a thing that I think is going to have one impact, and then it has a very, very different one.
It can be a real gift. So... I want to clarify that I'm not talking about boring theater.
Sure.
Okay? I'm not talking about going to see the Seagull, where it's a very traditional performance and everybody's just reciting their lines.
The dark and gloomy trousers of Uncle Vanya. Yeah.
Exactly. Boring theater, fuck that. I'm not interested in that. So disaster theater is usually a serious piece that becomes unintentionally funny. Or at least... something that's undertaken with a seriousness by the performers that then becomes comedy. Well, that's typically how I've seen it.
And what's funnier than good-intentioned, hardworking people just totally fail? I mean, what's funnier than that? Nothing. Nothing is the answer. Nothing is funnier than watching earnest, hardworking, well-intentioned people completely fail to do with it. I mean, it's just, hysterical.
Exactly.
Hysterical.
So there are a couple of examples from film that I just wanted to give because it might put the lens in focus as to what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So Roadhouse is a good example.
When you said there were a couple of examples from film, Patrick Swayze immediately flashed to mind, and I was like, no, let's just hold off, and we'll see where she's going with this. Okay.
And another example is basically any B movie.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Yep.
And then the probably the example supreme of this genre in film is The Room by Tommy Wiseau,
which I haven't seen, but I've heard jokes about it.
I haven't seen the entire film, but I've seen the kind of best of clips.
Okay.
So for anyone who doesn't know, The Room is a film that Tommy Wiseau made. God, I don't know, it must have been like 20 years ago now. And it was a melodrama that he wrote, directed, and starred in. And it's just really bad. It's illogical. It's hard to follow the plot. There's no clarity of character. There's a lot of inconsistency within it. And the melodrama is so overblown, it's unbelievable. So seriously, go to YouTube and look at Best of The Room. But it's a film that's so bad that it's gained this incredible cult following and actually garnered Tommy Wiseau a lot of success because it was so bad.
Which is exactly what we're trying to do with this podcast, everybody, so please keep listening.
Yeah, if it sounds like shit, that's on purpose. No. The thing about disaster theater is that it cannot be intentional.
Yeah, that's true.
I've thought a lot about this.
Yep.
And it can't be intentional. So I'm not talking about movies that are satirical and trying to be
Right.
bad, like the MacGruber.
Or Waiting for Guffman, which is a different
which
kind
I will,
of... Oh, you're going to talk about it.
I
Okay.
will. No, I will bring that up later in a different context.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad
it's a different kind
you
of
mentioned
thing.
that.
Different kind of thing, but same sort of... Yeah.
Yeah. I've had philosophical arguments with other theater people about whether disaster theater can be intentional. And I've come to the conclusion that it really can't.
Well, this may be too heady, which is my impulse when I'm delighted. Which I am. I really can't stop laughing. It's going to be... Yeah. So there's this thing about a joke actually just being two stories, and you're following one, and then something happens in the joke and makes you realize you're in the other, and jumping track from one story to the other is what makes you laugh. Like, that's what a punchline is it tells you that the story you thought you were in is actually not the story you're in. So there's something that feels resonant, and that's an idea from people who study the mechanics of joke telling. But there's something about that where you can't, if you think you're in one story, like your belief that you're in one story, your sincerity there is actually what makes the punchline funny, because you're jumped suddenly, right? And so if you always know the punchline, maybe you're not able to make it be as funny. Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of theater. I've gone to a lot of festivals, and I've seen a lot of wonderful pieces. I've seen shows on Broadway. I've seen touring shows, and none of those experiences have stayed with me in the way that my experiences of disaster theater have. I just wanted to dig into the mechanics of disaster theater.
Yeah.
It's usually the result of beginner's mind, what they would call in the Zen community beginner's mind, which is an unawareness of the rules of the game, whatever game. So, right, the game now is theater or art in general.
Yeah.
So, because you don't know what works or shouldn't work or should work or what you're supposed to do, you have this incredible freedom and creativity to just do whatever you want. And so a lot of really unique and creative and some bad ideas come out of that when you're an amateur and you're in beginner's mind.
The line from the teachings is, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. And so the admonition is to strive to always be a beginner. Like, always have that sense that you could do anything.
Right. And there's that line that is often incorrectly attributed to Einstein, which it has different forms, but it's basically intelligence is limited, but stupidity is infinite. The idea is that there are a few ways to do something right, but there are zillions and trillions and infinite number of ways to do things wrong.
Yep.
And when I say stupidity, I want to be clear. I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
So often what happens with beginner's mind in any art form, but specifically in theater in this case, is that you end up with fiasco. So This American Life did this incredible episode years ago, which they've actually just recently re-released, called Fiasco.
Timely.
And exactly. And they define fiasco as a situation where a group of people are overreaching or overambitious relative to their skill.
Yeah.
People are on their edge, and they either pull it off or they don't.
Yeah.
And
oh my God. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I totally interrupted you, but that, like, people are on their edge and they either pull it off or they don't. I mean, that's Crowhurst, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fiasco. Okay.
This American Life episode specifically deals in the initial story is about a production of Peter Pan. I highly recommend everyone check it out. The latest re-release is episode number 699. You can listen to it for free online or on iTunes. And it's fantastic. It's a detailed exploration of this piece of disaster theater. And it's so entertaining. I mean, imagine Peter Pan. You know, you're talking rigged, people flying through the air unsuccessfully. It's fantastic. They really defined it as when you're overreaching, right? Which everybody's levels and what overreaching is for them is different. But I think fiasco is something that's usually present on some level. The overreaching is present in disaster theater usually. And then another manifestation is the serious comedy, what I'm calling the serious comedy, which is that it's a piece of it when people are totally unaware of how funny they're being. So they're approaching things in a serious way, but it becomes hilarious. So
yeah, I mean, that's why the straight man is necessary in comedy duos, right? Like, you need someone who doesn't get it. One
example of this is I saw a juggler perform once who had a stand that his juggling balls were on. I think there were 3 or 4 of them. And he gave the most brilliant comedic performance, but he didn't know, in that he was playing this thing where he was drawn to the balls energetically. And so he'd reach for them and then he'd go, no.
Yeah.
And he'd pull back. So it was this like really beautiful melodrama. It was fucking hilarious, but he, in his intention, was very serious. Like, that intensity, but it was brilliantly hilarious. He just didn't know. He just was unaware of how funny it was. The genres of fantasy and melodrama are the 2 where disaster theater is most likely to occur.
I can see it.
And the reasons are because both of those genres require 100% commitment on the part of the performers. Any doubt, they're so close to comedy. Any doubt and you fall over into comedy or satire. And also because melodrama is sustained by the belief and drama and emotion within the actors.
Yeah.
And fantasy, partially because of the same thing, like you really have to believe it, but also because fantasy just provides a lot of opportunity for bad special effects or bad costuming or costuming malfunctions. Tim and I saw a fantasy production years and years ago. This is another one we still talk about all the time. We ended up calling it the Waiting for the Nipple show because it was sort of all set in the Fae realm and things like that. But it was kind of a bunch of kids who wanted to dress up in cool costumes.
Oh yeah,
really.
I was going to say, you choose that because you want to have like glitter on your face and like
totally, which is understandable.
Sure, who doesn't want that?
There's one, this is a good example of the drama over the story. There was one moment where this girl is writhing in this costume, and it was one of those like pleather bustiers, but it was so close to where her nipples should have been that it just kept riding down. Nothing ever happened, but you can't help but wait for that moment.
Yeah.
So we called it the Waiting for the Nipple show because we were waiting for the nipple.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the two genres that you mentioned are actually the 2 where you're like, there's so many opportunities for you to be taken out of what's happening.
Exactly.
There are more opportunities for you to be taken out of what's happening, maybe because it's heightened in one way or another. And so, like, having teched a lot of dance shows, I'm always like, am I going to get to see your ass in the show? Because that skirt is awful. Am I going to get to see your ass? I'm very distracted by whether or not I'm going to be able to see your ass. But yeah, you get your pink light now. That's fine. So yeah, I mean, just always ready to be distracted anyway. Human minds are always ready to be distracted anyway. Like, why give them additional opportunity? Don't threaten a nipple if you want people to pay attention to your show.
Yeah. But it's totally, it does create a separate story and a separate reality, but it's totally engaging and hilarious and just delightful.
Just not what they intended. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just skip to what I really want to talk about, which is
please do that.
The most memorable disaster theater experience I've ever had. It was glorious. So we saw this piece at a festival, and it was basically a Gothic retelling of Alice in Wonderland.
Which sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm interested. Okay.
It had a really cool aesthetic of, there were some puppets in it and there was some acrobatic stuff in it. But the pieces just didn't come together really well. It started, the first moment of the piece was a girl in a sing-songy voice singing about, I don't know if it was the Jabberwocky. I wasn't really clear, but it was like na 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 na. So it's supposed to be creepy, but it was just kind of awkward.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, honey. You're 18. Menace is not among the things you can offer to this situation. I'm sorry. Maybe in a few years. Menace will be available to
call
you.
us back
Yeah.
once you've developed some skills of menace.
You're completely not threatening me right now. Are you
Right,
trying to threaten
right.
me? You're completely not threatening me.
And the girl who played Alice was, I think, around 14, 13. And then the guy who played the Mad Hatter his character was also a vampire, I think. So it set up the tone between them. Definitely had some statutory rapish.
Sure.
There was innuendo and, just a sexual vibe between them that was freaky.
That noise is... That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first moment, I want to describe to you what happened inside of us as we watched this piece. Because it was fascinating. And I'm not the type of person that says fascinating when I mean bad. Like, oh, that's interesting, and I mean bad. No, it was actually fascinating.
You were fascinated. You could not look away.
So what happened very quickly was there was this incongruity between the intention of the show and the audience's natural reaction to what they were seeing, which was humor.
Yeah.
And that tension between those two was maddening. It was because you felt like you couldn't laugh.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
But you really wanted to. I mean, laughter is such a natural response to life.
Yeah.
So this inescapable urge to laugh, but that social pressure on top not to, because it felt like they didn't want you to.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you're like, oh, this could be such a joyful experience if you, the maker of the entertainment, could completely change your orientation to the subject matter and also your delivery and your mindset. Can you do that really quick? Because we all really want to laugh.
Yeah. So the next funny thing that happened was this group. The music was very industrial goth. Kind of, 9 Inch Nails type, lots of like, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So this soundtrack like that with this beat but sort of industrial noise starts, and these 3 mummies come out. And so they're just 3 actors wrapped in toilet paper, I guess. Yep. And they had these chains, and they were sort of sliding their feet across the stage and then shaking the chains like in beat to the music. So it was like this walk and then stink and then walk, and it started to sync up with the beat of the music. And my partner and I just looked at each other and we went, dance, 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 under our breath. And sure enough, they started dancing, and it was incredible, in this very serious tone. And there was another moment where they were approaching the river Styx, and so they announced, here's the
This is
ship.
Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah.
But sorta. Okay.
Yeah,
That's fine. Okay.
So the craft from the river Styx, the vessel, they're like, here it comes.
Charon's ferry boat, dude.
Yeah.
I got you.
They're like, here it comes. And so about 20 seconds pass, and then the little nose of the boat pokes out. Slightly moves, and then it slightly moves, and about 3 or 4 minutes go by as this thing crosses down from the stage, so like where the audience would file in, and just at this creeping pace moves. So it deflated.
Seriously, 3 or 4 minutes. Seriously.
Yeah. No, that's no joke. It obviously completely deflated the tension.
Yeah.
But we filled that room for tension with the comedy of the moment, which was brilliant. It was fucking brilliant.
And everyone burst into nervous laughter. Are we still supposed to be watching the boat very carefully? It's been a really long time. Okay.
So the audience itself was holding that laughter in.
Yeah. Because
again, we felt like we couldn't. And basically what happened is there were some very cheesy jokes written into the script. Super bad. It's like super basic jokes. Puns, things like that. And every time and I don't actually fucking love puns, but they were just cheesy jokes. But every time an actor would say one, the audience would take the opportunity, like Indiana Jones diving under the the door that's slamming down, and take the opportunity and laugh. So the laughter was so huge in those moments that the actors would deliver these lines because we had to release it somehow. Mm-hmm. And so the actors, you could see them start to realize that, wow, they're really killing it, right?
We may have a hit on our hands.
Yeah, it's like me. By the way, packed house. And, and I actually think they sold a lot of tickets, so something was working.
I'm just going to guess there were like 25 people in the cast of this, and I'm sure that at least they all had 10 friends, you know. Just my guess. So it's like they'd gotten the information. They'd gotten the unapplied information that it is useful if you are riding the line between either melodrama and fantasy or comedy. When you're on that line, it is useful to give your audience a chance to perhaps relieve tension, like sticking a fork to the top of the regulator on a pressure cooker, right? Got to release some of it. So they'd gotten that information, but just didn't really know how to apply it in a way that made their... Yeah.
And there were moments throughout the show that had stilt walkers and these really ambitious things, but the stilt walkers didn't quite have the head clearance space. So they weren't confident. And who would be in that situation, right?
Bonking your head on the front.
So they just kind of ambled.
Very careful stilt walkers.
Yes.
Very precise.
The most careful stilt walkers. Yeah, I mean, poor thing. Really, what else are they going to do, you know? I think there were aerialists and things like that. But my favorite moment, the sort of climax of this piece, was the arrival of the Jabberwocky. And I should say, the puppets were really cool in this show. And again, that's a place where this disaster theater can come, is in costuming and in special effects and puppetry and things like that. But the puppets were really cool. So the actors announce that the Jabberwocky's coming. The music starts for the arrival of the Jabberwocky, and it's very high pitched strings, you know, like almost the Psycho song. Mm-hmm. Like very, you know, and the actors at the top of their lungs, blood curdling screams. I mean, so realistic that it's startling. And the actors put their hands near their faces and scream because the Jabberwocky's coming. They burst off stage. About 30 seconds of dead silence, then about 10 seconds of the curtain moving, and then out emerges the fucking Snuffleupagus. I mean, the sweetest puppet, huge puppet, giant, incredible amounts of work went into this. He's got one bobbly eye and one eye that's in. He's adorable. He just wants to love you. And
his eyelashes create a breeze in the theater. Yeah. He blinks his eyes and your hair blows back.
Yeah. He's made of egg crates, and he's got a janky, jambly look to him. You know, he sort of shambles on stage in this, you know, goofy, up and down kind of bouncy way, almost like a puppy who wants to play. And the incongruity, obviously, the joke is the incongruity between the setup and the music and the actor's reaction, and then, you know, emerging this elephant puppy Snuffleupagus love. Yeah. It was clear what his intention was, which was to just love everybody.
I'm here for the cuddles.
Yeah.
Why is everyone
just
screaming?
Here for the lulls.
Can't someone scritch my ears?
Yeah. It was phenomenal. Oh. It was such brilliant comedy.
But they had no idea. Like, it was such good comedy. Yeah, but... Okay, go ahead.
No, it's just, as I say it, I'm realizing that there, and this might be just a reframe of what you said earlier, but about punchlines, but they're in one story, and they think they're following the rules of a particular genre, but in fact they're following the rules of comedy. Because in creating an incongruous reaction between the threat
the anticipated
of the thing
threat
and the thing
the
itself,
thing. Yeah.
That's comedy.
Yeah.
So So
actually, I was watching Thor Ragnarok this morning, and when he's in the chair going through the tunnel with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory music, and he's terrified because the setup is that he's gonna meet, and then he shows up and it's just Jeff Goldblum with some sparkly makeup on. It's hilarious, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yes. What's hilarious is I just walked through the living room when we took our break, and Tim's fucking watching Thor Ragnarok. So weird day.
It's the feeling in the air.
So again, it's the drama on top of the story in which this new art of disaster theater really lives, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of thing that can only happen by accident. It's almost like if you tried to write it, you couldn't, right? Yeah. And that's again where the audience laughs or experiences something else, is in the meta, everything over the story.
I'm going to float an idea here that is detrimental to me and my work as a human being, because it means I'll have to sort of reorient a lot of the things I think and do. But I'm going to suggest that, I mean, I know when I'm ruthlessly scrolling through all of the various media outlets available to me, I'm just looking for an original story well told. Or barring that, any kind of story well told. Like, I'll watch your remake of Sense and Sensibility. Sure, you got some good foundations there. What are you going to bring to it?
Yeah.
But there's surprisingly, not surprisingly for me, but I have found very few examples of meta commentary that I find interesting. So I hope there's more people who find it interesting than I do, because I would very much like people to listen to this podcast, and that's what we're doing. But, I mean, there's something, when you're generating a storyline, when you're generating that primary, the reason it's primary is because you are interfacing with the voices from beyond. Like, you are pulling something out of non-existence into existence. And that energy is a lot of why a story is good or bad. Like, you have a lot of, as Liz Acosta says, potential juice there. Mm-hmm. But in the meta, you only have the juice the original person was able to pull down and turn into form somehow, right? And so you're obviously secondary, and you have less energy dedicated to your productions, maybe, as a result, because they're derivative. We're derivative, yeah. Claire.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if there's something too that I like this idea of the voices, and I'm just imagining that you hear a voice that inspires you to make this production, but you just misunderstood them. Yeah. And you thought they said it was a drama and it's actually a comedy. Either that, or you've encountered a trickster voice who's like, you're gonna make this serious piece.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna make this serious piece.
You really wanted to create something else.
Right, but it turns out that voice is like an ant that's injected its toxin into you, and right. It's like driving your body around until you die, and then it's gonna feast on your hull like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to this like idea of the meta, is that what happens is these disaster theater experiences are where story, as in the story you're watching on stage, and real life, which is what's happening in the audience, really intersect. And that's where these moments become really precious, because it's in that space, very directly in that space between the audience and the production, that the magic happens.
Sure. You say they intersect as though it's a very nice and neat, four corner stop sign where everyone is like in their lane. They don't. Do they intersect, or do they crash?
Okay, maybe they collide. Maybe I'll say that. It's the place where these the story and real life collide.
Thank you.
And it's precious.
It's precious because it doesn't happen very often, or like, you're nodding, yeah.
It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't. I mean, you and I have watched, I would say, more than our share in the universe of live theater over the years. We've seen more than our share.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't happen very often. So often things are just bad. They're not disaster theater.
Yeah.
Because I think actually disaster theater requires dedication, purpose, talent, hard work, all the things. Disaster theater requires all of the things that truly enjoyable, like, one surface theater requires.
Yeah.
It just also requires a fundamental misunderstanding.
Yeah. Right. I love that. Yeah. I mean, experiences I've had watching disaster theater are by and far the theater experiences I speak about the most. And that's from someone who also has made theater and made and toured shows. I don't talk about my own shows as much as I talk about these disaster experiences.
If you talked about your own shows a lot, I don't know if you'd have any friends. That's a tough one. Let me tell you about this novel I'm writing again. Yeah. No, please.
Did I ever tell you about that novel I'm writing?
Can't we talk about the weather and about the cost of groceries and how hard it is to Zoom your mom?
The other really beautiful thing that happens during these disaster theater experiences is that in breaking the rules of whatever drama they're trying to make, they're making comedy. We've said that. But what that does is it forces the audience themselves to let go of the rules of drama as well and really respond and adjust to what they're actually in, which is a comedy. So it's an act of getting the audience to let go, right? Because usually there's a preconceived notion going in, and it's most satisfying when the disaster is a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I look at marketing and I want I want my experience to be what the experience was marketed to be. Like, that's the reason I consult marketing. What experience am I going to have here?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so when it's not, I'm either like, motherfucker! Like, why that pull quote? Why'd you, that's nothing to do with what's actually happening here.
I just wanted to remind everybody that there's a certain thing called the Museum of Bad Art.
Oh my God, everybody go. It's in Dedham, Massachusetts. It is the best. I lived in Boston for a year, and actually it may have moved, but it used to be in the basement of a community space in Dedham.
You can find them online at museumofbadart.org if you want to have a disaster experience, artistic disaster experience in these quarantine times.
In particular, look for a painting that they've titled Sunday on the Pot with George. And it's really, it's still with me. I saw it once, and it's amazing.
Teresa, I want to take you all the way back to 2012.
What? Okay.
When Cecilia Jimenez in Borja, Spain, decided to restore Ecce Homo.
The Potato Jesus.
The Potato Jesus, also known as Monkey Christ.
I like Potato Jesus because there's less potential for racial bullshit with it.
Yeah. So as you know, and I'll just say it in case someone doesn't know, Cecilia Jimenez decided to restore this fresco of Jesus, and she was doing her best, and it didn't turn out well.
She was doing her best.
And she made a mess of it, and it went viral, and everybody freaked out and loved it. I just wanted to tell you, so this was 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
In the 2 years after that, the town of Borja saw 150,000 tourists come to their town.
Yep, that's cool.
They have overall seen an increase of 4 times more tourists than ever before. Mm-hmm. They have put the image on their wine. They've put their image on magnets, mugs, T-shirts, mouse pads, key rings, teddy bears. The proceeds from the chapel and from the mementos, souvenirs you can buy have gone to fund a care facility for the elderly who could not otherwise afford it. The town is thriving. The restaurants and hotels and bars are doing incredibly well. Cecilia Jimenez I read 2 articles. One was from The Guardian and one was from ArtNet News. And in The Guardian, Cecilia Jimenez was interviewed, and she says that when she looks at that painting now, she sees a handsome face, a face that I love. They have put the image on their lottery tickets, and vineyards are fighting to put the image on their wine bottles. This article in The Guardian interviewed Andrew Flack, who's a librettist who was in town at the time for some research he was doing.
I love that there are still librettists in the world.
Yeah, I know.
There are like 4 of them, and one of them was in Spain.
Yeah, this guy, Andrew, said of the painting, he said, "Your disaster could be my miracle." Yeah. And I think that's what we're getting at with disaster theater is, man, guys, that was tough, but it was a fucking miracle for me, you know?
That's not what you thought you were going to give people. It's not what you necessarily hoped to get out of it. But I will never forget your version of Alice in Wonderland. Or, or of the river dancing pillowcases with panties in their arms. Yeah, the Potato Jesus, I don't, thank you for your closing remarks. My reaction to the Potato Jesus is like a lot of what we're talking about, like, oh, because like she tried, she reached, of course her reach exceeds her grasp, that sort of thing. Yeah. And you talked about that, like we have a thing, but our skill set does not make that thing possible for us at the moment. Yeah. Like we have a vision, we just have no skills. Yeah.
I wanted to mention too, I forgot, disaster theater is so influential that actually fiasco is a theatrical genre. It's a storytelling genre. So think of Waiting for Guffman. Right, that's a fiasco, and it's basically a group of people trying to pull something off that goes incredibly wrong. So there are comedic heist movies like that. It doesn't have to be a theatrical production.
It also doesn't have to be comedic, right? Because I think Reservoir Dogs is probably fiasco.
Yeah, that's true.
That shit's dork.
It's a tragic fiasco. Dork. Yeah, fiasco is an actual genre, so there is something about it that we want to see. Mm-hmm. It's our fascination with human error and beautiful, hilarious mistakes.
Well, and just like at a really concrete level, like if I have surrendered to the thoughts of those around me and disregarded my own good sense so much that I have purchased tickets to a live theater performance, then I am there to either be entertained. Well, I'm there to be entertained in some way. Like, I want an emotional, I've paid you my $10, now you need to give me some feels. Like, that's the trade. Yeah. And whatever that is, like, I'm willing to work with whatever input you give me, and I'll formulate something in here that'll keep me going if I possibly can. So I want you to succeed. I'm ready to be impacted by whatever the hell you've got going on, right? And I'm willing to pay $10 for it. And it's okay with me if what I remember is not the incredibly dark, amazing, moving, gothic interpretation of Alice in Wonderland, and what I remember instead is that you just kind of fucked everything up, and all the timing was wrong, and it was hilarious because of it. Like, if I remember the funny thing, like, I've still had an emotional experience, so I've gotten my money's worth in some way.
Exactly.
I'm on board. Yeah. People are allowed to think what they think. They're supposed to have their own experience of whatever I make. And whatever that experience it is, like, I'm trying to influence it in the way I want it to go, but as we've seen, like, doesn't always work that way, right? And so whatever experience they take from it, I'm like, well, that's yours.
Yeah.
That's yours. You interacted with it, and you had that experience. You own that, and that belongs to you. Like, okay, And so part of what, like experiencing all story, or, like, all media, all narrative is like, you want your audience to take a certain thing, but ultimately they take what they're going to take, and I actually think that's really powerful. Roland Barthes would say that it indicates that the author is truly dead, right? Because once you've written the words down, whoever you are in relation to those words is no more valid than whoever someone else is in relation. But I too auditioned for talent shows in elementary school. Only mine was with a friend. And we were going to do this show for the talent show, and it was going to be amazing. We were going to dance to a song we really liked. We were just going to make a music video, which was very new at the time. And I remember not really wanting to perform, but wanting a reason to hang out with this person and spend time with them, because she was, and still is, one of the funniest people I have ever known. She made me laugh like no one else has ever made me laugh since. And I won't say her name for reasons that are similar to the ones we just discussed talking about theater. I don't want to mention her and have her not be happy that I did. But she made me laugh like crazy, and I was like, let's be best. First of all, let's be best friends, please. And second of all, can we do this show at the talent show? And so we had practiced our little dance, and we were going to be in the mirror, and we were going to be doing a mime routine in the mirror, and then the reflection comes out. She's the one that's a reflection, and then she's a real person, and then we do our little dance routine.
This sounds incredible.
It was amazing. And then 2 other friends decided they also wanted to be in it, and she was like, well, why don't they just be passing by while this is happening? And I was like, that was it. Like, Teresa was done. It's like, it doesn't make any logical sense for them to be passing by, in heavy, rude air quotes, passing by in the middle of a house. I'm looking in a mirror. Is there a mirror outside? Have you ever seen a mirror outside? No. This is supposed... And it was just like I didn't want any of her other friends to hang out with us. So I was like, I just want to hang out with her because she makes me laugh. And so they ended up passing by, and I was miserable the whole time. And it wasn't disaster theater. It was just bad. But yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember
the setup sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was gonna change their lives. If only they knew how much I would have changed their lives with that piece. Yeah, I don't know what I want to say except, God, thank you so much for telling me the story of that performance. Like,
it's hard to tell that story.
I definitely.
It's still mortifying.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I'm glad that there's delight. That's why I told it, because I knew, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I wish it wasn't still mortifying for you. It happened so long ago. You've done so much better since then. I don't know what to say to comfort you.
But what if I haven't? That's the fear.
But what if you haven't? Yeah, okay. Well, I can't touch into those really deep-seated adult kind of fears where we think we haven't accomplished anything that we're sent here to Earth to accomplish. That's not something I'm qualified to talk about.
What if all the work I've done, all the artistic work I've done since then has just been me metaphorically throwing my panties on the stage?
Yeah. So we're almost done, and now you're finally getting to the real shit. That's what I'm talking about. That's the real shit. The fear that all you're doing is throwing your panties on stage. Yeah, that's right. That's good. That's good stuff, right? There's some, that's a lie right there.
What I'm trying to say is that I think I love disaster theater because it gives me hope that my own mistakes and failures can have meaning in a different context.
Yeah, right? I didn't mean it to be this, but it's something.
Right. And I try very hard. Wow, I really want to cry now.
Good. That means we're touching real stuff. Do it.
Yeah. So I have certain skills, limited skills, and I try to make the space and give myself the focus to do things well. Mm-hmm. So I'm very intentional about what I take on. And I'm very intentional about learning and knowing that I know nothing. Mm-hmm. And knowing that once I feel like I know something, I still know nothing. So I approach things from a very logical, intentional place. And I still make mistakes even then. Because I lack experience in things, or there are acts of God, or
because making mistakes is what it is to be human.
That too. But it's very hard for me.
Yeah.
To imagine any kind of good coming out of that. Mm. In the moment, I'm very good at seeing the silver lining. So I'll see it afterwards. But in the moment, it just feels like abject failure, right? Mm-hmm. We can all relate to that. Mm-hmm. So I think the thing that I find so lovely about disaster theater is that it gives me hope that I'm not some grand exception whose mistakes couldn't be something else. Mm. That my mistakes could bring people joy, or my mistakes could serve purpose outside my limited human vision for them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
that's why I love it. And it's one of those things where it's a lot easier to love it when it's not yours.
Oh, yeah. See, that's the experiment. Is like, try and do something. Well, I mean, that's what we're doing with this podcast, right? We're trying to do something. We are in it sincerely. We are doing our best to do a certain thing. And we'll just fucking see.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But storytelling is so complex. I mean, it's something everyone does naturally. But it's such a complex thing to do when you set out to do it intentionally.
Yeah.
It's fucking hard.
And there's something about that effort. That effort, I think, is like part of the equation that we're talking about. Like so much effort in just the wrong way, you know?
Yeah. Well, Teresa, thanks for letting me tell you about disaster theater.
I am so thrilled to have heard about disaster theater from you, and I will be laughing about your elementary school escapades, and I'm going to tell every single person we know.
Please do.
That story.
I am keeping my underwear locked in the top drawer. They're not going nowhere.
This has been delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love
I'll
you.
talk to you again soon. I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Testing? Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.